So estimates are like anywhere between 750 to like 1.2 billion users worldwide for Excel. I mean, it's if you think about it like that, it's crazy. It's just
Welcome to episode 21 of It's About Data. This week, we're joined by Dave Langer to discuss his upcoming book, Python in Excel Step by Step. So, Dave Langer, welcome to our show, It's About Data. Did I first meet you on the Monday morning data chat, or did we meet before that? I don't exactly remember, but we definitely talked on the Monday morning data chat some
I
years back.
believe that was the first time. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think Joe and I knew each other from like the Data Heretics thing that we did way back in the day.
yeah,
Yeah, but I think that was the first time.
yeah. And you come, well, I wouldn't say you come from a different world, actually. I mean, you were a Microsoft software developer, very technical background. But then through various developments, you became, I think, one of the most famous Microsoft Excel trainers. And Excel is a bit different from what we normally cover, but it actually overlaps quite a bit. I think people like me from the data engineering world tend to dismiss it, but the reality is, as I said in my message, it's arguably the world's biggest data platform, right? Like how many, I don't know, what's the installed base of Microsoft Excel these days?
So first of all, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the most famous.
Okay, all right.
I
Don't be
appreciate I
carried away.
appreciate that. I'll take it, but I don't know if I
Okay.
deserve it or not. All right.
Okay.
So estimates are like anywhere between 750 to like 1.2 billion users
Yeah.
worldwide for Excel. I mean, it's if you think about it like that, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
I mean, I've heard it called as like the world's most popular BI tool.
Yeah,
it's the world's
absolutely.
most popular data tool. I mean, Matt and I might get a little wonky here. We're like, it's also the world's most popular programming tool because it actually is Turing complete even before they added other new stuff to it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say, I mean, and this actually, I get this opinion from people who are a lot more familiar with Excel, the guts of Excel than I ever was. But like the complaint about Excel for a long, long time is that it supported VBA, but it was kind of like a wonky, limited sort of VBA. So it's just awkward to use. And that's where a major topic of the show today comes in, which is Python in Excel, like embedding a really proper programming language that has like nice modern semantics that's widely used into Excel at last, which happened. I think I got access to the beta about 2 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah. 2023 is when I first got eyes on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's,
it's kind of a big deal. So for a long time, I was a big proponent of taking people with Excel skills,
yeah.
like pivot tables and all that kind of stuff, and then move them to R. That's what I was doing like 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, right? Saying,
Yeah.
look, your Excel skills actually translate to R programming pretty well, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Because the idea was you can't really do a lot of analytics inside of Excel because it's just too limited. But
Mm-hmm.
then they put Python in there, and I was like, okay, you guys are serious about this now, aren't you? Like, no need to, no reason to leave Excel now, man. It's all right there. Everything you need is like right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty full functional version of Python, to be perfectly frank. And my impression is I don't know all the details of things that are going on with Anaconda and such, but they seem to be adding a lot of functionality over time as well.
Yeah, it's so Anaconda, for people who aren't familiar, Anaconda is a
Yeah.
company that builds a pre-made distribution of Python with a whole
Yeah.
bunch of data science libraries included and
hmm
all of the technical gobbledygook figured out for you.
Yeah.
So Anaconda is working with Microsoft to provide them with the backbone for Python and Excel. And they've included a large number of libraries that allow you to do a lot of real world analytics stuff. I mean, not everything
Yeah.
is in there.
Right.
They'll increase it over time, but what's in there right now is pretty powerful stuff like market basket analysis, linear regression, random forests, all the cool stuff that you can think of to analyze your data in new and powerful ways is all in there. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints from more like traditional tech folks who are, writing microservices or something like this about the fact that it runs in the cloud and, it's controlled by Excel. I'm like, well, but let's consider the audience of, almost a billion people that use this thing. And suddenly you've made something that was not so accessible, where one of the pain points of Python has always been installing it. You completely bypass that and you can just get right into it and run your code.
Yeah, let's not talk about Python library management. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. For those of you that know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm
Oh
talking
man,
about.
I know what you're talking about. Trust me, I have way too much experience with this. Like it is one of the main pain points with Apache Airflow, which is an orchestration tool for managing, a bunch of data systems, is just dependency management. It's a
Yeah.
nightmare. So I am happy to bypass that. And it is there is the opportunity. Like someone could sort of outgrow this tool and become a Python developer if they wanted to. And so to me, it's
Yeah.
absolutely an on ramp to more programming.
Yeah. I mean, 15 years ago, when I was very much steeped in software engineering, I would have thought this was, well, let's be completely honest. 15 plus years ago, I thought Excel was evil, let alone putting Python in Excel being evil.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so I was just like, why are we bothering with this? Everyone should
right,
just learn SQL. It's going to be
right,
fine. Just get rid of Excel. But that was me coming from a real technical background, like you were referring to, right? So a lot
right,
of folks
right,
that are hardcore technologists are like, this Python and Excel thing is a joke,
right, right,
and for them, that there's a legitimate argument for that. However, they
right,
keep forgetting that it's not for them.
right.
It's not for them.
Right. Well, put it this way, but I mean, I'll ask the standard question because, of course, I'm a database person, and of course, I think a common critique as well. Excel is really, I mean, it's you get, I mean, it's the example here with Python in Excel. It's getting an amazing power. On the other hand, you don't have the discipline of a database. You don't have basically the transactions, and so therefore, what do you say basically, like say like myself or dooms or Debbie Downers like myself in terms of you're not you don't have the discipline of a database. What's your answer to that?
Okay, so I'm assuming when you say a database person, we're like in the DBA kind of realm.
Exactly. In other words, like
Okay.
with a database, you'll have assets, so you'll basically have concurrency, you'll have atomicity, all that sort of wonderful stuff. Whereas in
Right.
Excel, it's basically a set of numbers.
Well, so what we have to, so here's what I would say, and I'm speaking as a recovering enterprise architect, just so you know. So
Yeah,
there you go. Um, you have to differentiate the use cases for Excel. The reason why hardcore technology people hate Excel is because it's a hammer, and
mm-hmm.
people who use Excel turn everything into a nail. They smack it
Hmm.
with it, right? So I learned when I was working at Microsoft, I learned this term called spreadmarts, right? Which is
Oh
you
yeah,
have 50 worksheets, and essentially each
Yes.
worksheet is basically akin to a database table, and they're doing VLOOKUPs and index matches and joiner. That is a use case that Excel is probably not good for,
yeah,
right? I can't imagine that the progenitors of Excel back in the day, or any of the spreadsheet software like VisiCalc or whatever back in the day, imagined spreadmarts. That wasn't what they envisioned the tool for. Unfortunately, you have human beings, and they will take the hammer and they'll smack the nails, is what
yeah,
they do. And Excel, unfortunately, is a very, very easy to use hammer. So certain use cases, I am 100% like, should you be building spread marts? Absolutely not. You shouldn't. As you know, and that's me talking as a former enterprise architect. But the reality is, you can fight City Hall all you want, and in the end, you're not going to win. So I'm with you, Tony. I get everything you're saying, and simultaneously, people are still going to use and abuse it. So
Right.
what I tend to say is, okay, look, I advocate for using Excel in the right way. For example, I'm a big fan of using Power Query instead of writing monstrous formulas and functions and all that kind of stuff. Using Power Query to connect databases and pull data in rather than doing everything in a manual way. And also, there's going to be a large swath of that 1 billion users, let's say, of Excel that are never going to change what they're going to do.
yeah,
But
Hmm.
they still want to analyze the data. That's what people tend to forget. Excel is first and foremost a data analysis tool. This is what it was for. A pivot table ostensibly is for data analysis, right?
Hmm.
It's not necessarily for gluing together enterprise processes where you don't have an IT system with a backing database to actually collect the data and organize the data, but people use it that way. So we have to be realistic. So I tend to focus mostly on the I don't care how you got the data in Excel. What can we do with it now that you've got your data in Excel?
yeah, yeah.
Even though I'd be the first one to tell people, look, don't build spread marks. That's a bad idea.
Plausible deniability.
Well, so I actually went on a rampage once at a company, and I taught everybody I could SQL and gave them query access to the data warehouse because I
Yeah.
wanted them to get off of things like Excel and Google Sheets and that
Right.
sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
And when I talk about that on social media, I get a lot of hate from people like, "What? You did what? What are you crazy?" I'm like, "Look, it was fine. Yes, I let project managers fire queries at the data warehouse. It was fine. No, we had no issues whatsoever. It was okay. But even that, there was only a limited amount of uptake. What I found was even though after I taught them SQL and gave them access to the database, guess what they were doing? They were like running the query and sticking it in Excel. So I was like,
Well, what I'll say though,
what are you going to do?
well, running the query in Excel is way better than having a file share where someone uploads a CSV every 2 weeks and then the other people
Right.
look at it and then mess with it. Like actually hitting the database, the source of truth, is so much better than that.
Yeah, and one of the things we have to remember, I would argue as well, is that I have traditionally worked in technology companies or very
Yeah.
large corporations
Yeah.
with IT departments and
Yep.
IT
Yep.
budgets. I mean, you get out of that, right? You drop out of the Fortune
Oh yeah.
1000, you
Yep.
start talking about small, medium-sized businesses, they're not
Right.
going to have a DBA,
No.
No.
right,
No.
on staff.
No.
Yeah.
So Excel caters to all of those businesses that might, if you want to think of it as sub Fortune 1000, right? All those
Hmm.
businesses with various levels of IT maturity and process maturity. And what I learned eventually was I got to meet them where they're at,
Yep.
right?
That's
If I
fair.
want them to do
That's
better
fair.
analysis, I have to meet them where they're at. And that's
Yeah.
with lots of worksheets essentially in a workbook.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this, and I brought this up before the show. How did you go from being hardcore tech person, enterprise architect at Microsoft, to being an Excel trainer? If I remember the story, like you were kind of caught by surprise. You posted a YouTube video at one point, which totally blew up. But take us from A to B.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I've been in technology a long time, right? Got the gray hair, 28 plus years now, right? I've been paid to write COBOL on an IBM mainframe. That's how old I am.
That could
So
just mean you got hired by Delta Airlines yesterday, but we'll set
that's
that
true too, right?
aside.
Or maybe I'm, contracting at $500 an hour with like state
That's
agencies
right.
here in the United States.
Yeah.
um, but I was a hardcore software engineer for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
I was in UML. People don't even know what UML is anymore, but I think you
Oh
guys do.
gosh.
Yeah, UML, architecture, soft design patterns, all that stuff. I was all up into all that for a long, long time. And then when I was working at Microsoft, true story, I was working on the enterprise architecture team at Microsoft, and I was assigned the task of building a enterprise information model for all of Microsoft, which you might think ostensibly is a very good idea. But if
That
you know
sounds
anything
very
about
hard.
if you know anything about Microsoft culture,
Yeah.
it's like herding cats on meth. Everyone's right. So nobody wanted to agree on common definitions for anything, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
essentially that
Yeah.
broke me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with enterprise architecture. I'm done with all this stuff. I don't care. I want to do something completely different. So I actually took a job in the SQL Server team as a program manager. So I was doing
Huh.
PMs, product
Hmm.
management, program management stuff in SQL
Right.
Server for a while, and that was really cool, right? Because I brought in outside expertise in enterprise things, and I could bring that perspective to like the feature development, all that kind of stuff. Because a lot of people that work at Microsoft and other software companies have never actually worked in the field, so they don't necessarily
Right.
know, hey, that'd be a really cool feature, but guess what? That's never going to happen because of SOX compliance. No one's going to let you do that in the real world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Things like
Yeah.
that.
Fair enough.
And then that got me into data, working for SQL Server, not surprisingly, right? I've been a
Right.
SQL Server user since like 1998. So when it was back when it was not much more than Informix transformed, right? Um, so love SQL Server, love databases, love data, and that really started getting me into the into the data world more. And then what happened was I moved into the Xbox division, and they put me in charge of the BI and analytics for as an architect for them, so the data warehouse and all that kind of stuff. And that got me further and further into data reporting and KPI development and all that kind of really nerdy data stuff from an enterprise perspective, because I worked in the manufacturing supply chain area of Xbox. So it was more of a traditional kind of business thing, not necessarily the
Got
hardware
it.
side of it, like this hardware engineering. And then I was getting my master's degree in computer science at night, working full time, going to the UW at night. And I took a course on machine learning. And that was like, what? And then I realized I could use our data warehouse, the Xbox supply chain data warehouse, is like a crystal ball. I could use it to actually predict the future. And that was just like mind blowing. And that got me into data and all the shapes and forms. And then inevitably, of course, that led me to working with business professionals. And guess what they use? Whether they work at Microsoft or not, guess what they're using?
Mhm.
I mean, this was before Google Sheets was as big as it is now, right? This was,
Right.
maybe almost 10 years ago now. So Excel's a thing. And that got me into Excel. I'm like, okay, I'm interested in analytics. I'm interested in helping the business drive data-driven decisions. I cannot ignore Excel. There's no way I can do that. If I want to be
Right.
successful, now if I want to be on my high horse, I can ignore Excel. But if I want to be successful, I got to
Nice. Well,
Not so
let's ask
much.
the question here, which is that with your new book, what would you say is kind of what are some of the key lessons and key messages that you're looking to impart? Because obviously the whole focus of this is like meet essentially these these business professionals, whatever you want to call them,
hmm
where they live.
Right.
So what's really the key point that you're really trying to put over? What are the key lessons, the key takeaways you're trying to
Yeah.
provide?
It's a great question, right? Especially if there's technical folks watching this, they might want to be throwing stuff at the screen at me, right? What are you saying, Dave? So the easiest way to think about it is that because there's so many users of Excel worldwide, there are many sub audiences, if you want to think of it that way, many
Fair
sub
enough.
constituencies, right? Just like there's in real life. If you talk about a billion people, so the core idea of this book is that it is for definitely for a small segment of that population. I have no illusions about this being like some sort of like New York Times bestseller kind of thing, right?
That would be
It,
amazing, right?
you're right. Yeah, it'd be amazing for a tech book, especially. But Excel has always had these various constituencies, these various audiences, and the more you talk about being rigorous in terms of using data and analyzing data, you get a smaller and smaller subset of that population. So that's the first lesson. This is not for everybody. This is for people who are serious about using data to drive decisions, to stand out at work based on the power of the analytics that they can and insights they can provide. So that's the first lesson. Second lesson is when you learn Python for analytics, you're only learning a subset of Python. And mostly what you learn is pretty much conceptually the same to most of the things that you already know in Excel. It's just a
Yeah.
process of mapping what you know in Excel. Matt, you've seen the book,
Yeah. Yeah.
how I do it, right? How I write the book, right? And teach is you map the Excel concepts to Python. For example, in Excel, data formats matter, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Inevitably somebody's opened up a workbook and they look at a column that's supposed to be dates and they see integers like 41,367. That's because the date
Yeah.
format, the cell format is wrong.
Yeah.
So that is the way how Excel does data types. Well, that's what you have in Python, right? So right there, you
Yeah.
already have a mapping between what you know in Excel and what you know in Python. So that's the
Mhm.
second lesson. You learn a subset of Python and it's not nearly as hard as you think because you're just mapping what you already know.
Right.
Another example, pandas, which is just basically
Yep.
the way you work with entire tables of data.
Mm.
Hey, have you ever done a VLOOKUP? That's
There
like
you
a
go.
joint. That's like a
Or a
joint
pivot.
or a
You have a
pivot.
nice section on pivots, right? Because
Right.
advanced Excel users no pivots.
There's even a method, a function called pivot table.
Yep. Yep.
so, yeah. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, and this is something I think Matt really liked based on his feedback, was Python is integral to Microsoft's vision for Excel because of AI.
Yep. Yep.
So the AI
Mhm.
technology that Microsoft has is called Copilot. That's the brand. They're putting it in all their products, including
Mhm.
Copilot in Excel. And
Right.
the most useful way to use the Copilot AI in an Excel generates Python code. The AI literally generates Python code to do the work that it needs to do. So, for example,
Mhm.
hey, Copilot, I've got this data. Tell me something interesting about it. It will generate it'll generate a bunch of Python code behind the scenes, run some analyses for you, and then provide you some information. Sometimes it'll do things like run a cluster analysis for you
Yep.
automatically,
Yep.
generate a decision tree machine learning predictive model for you automatically. I mean, it,
Mhm.
it, it uses all the battle tested advanced analytics techniques automagically behind the scenes just
Yeah.
based on your prompt. So that's the third lesson, which is if you want to be all in on the AI powered future of Excel, you got to know Python. There's just no way
Yep.
around it.
Yep.
That's just the way they've
Mhm.
built everything.
Yeah. Well, because there's no way. I mean, in Excel, you can use formulas and cells, and then those are applied iteratively across the sheet. First of all, everyone knows who comes from a coding world that that's extremely hard to track what happens from your A column all over to your Z column as all these transformations happen. And second, it's just not a nice format even for humans to read, let alone machines. So that's where Python
Mm.
comes in. Completely agree with that. Let me ask you this because I brought this up on LinkedIn. Tony and I are, I would say, both AI optimists and AI skeptics. And you definitely bring some AI skepticism into the last chapter of the book. So you give this example where Copilot misbehaves. And so talk a bit about that example and how people can use AI tools and not go completely off the rails in the process.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that Matt gave me some positive feedback on, so I appreciate that,
Yes.
sir. um, I am bullish on AI long
Yeah.
term with a huge asterisk, right? With the fine print, the
Yes.
caveat, right? And an 8-point font at the very bottom,
That everyone ignores as they're
which is
pumping their AI
yeah,
startup.
which is not to date myself with this reference, but AI is all about trust but verify these
Yeah.
days. That's what it
Yeah.
boils down to.
Yeah.
Now, vibing is a real popular idea right now, right?
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
see posts on social media where somebody's like, "Hey, I vibe coded my new website and I don't know anything about
Yeah.
CSS or
Yeah.
HTML or anything like that." Great. That's totally fine, right? Vibing is a great tool for certain scenarios where the verification process can be easily done by somebody who is doing the prompting, right? And if,
Mhm.
if you're building a website and you don't actually care about the underlying HTML and CSS code, as long as it loads fast enough and works like you like, who cares? That's totally okay, right?
Right.
Especially if you're like a small business, that's totally fine. Uh, in the case of Excel, it gets a little bit more complicated because if you use AI to write some formulas for you, it's very easy for you to visualize or verify visually that the formulas are working correctly.
Right.
Or if you ask
Right.
it to build a pivot table for you. But if you ask it to do an advanced analysis and it generates a
Right.
bunch of Python and Excel code behind the scenes, and you don't know how to read Python and
Mhm.
you don't know how to actually conduct the analyses, you are playing with fire because you cannot
Yes.
verify what it's producing. And that's where my asterisk comes in. I'm very bullish on AI in its current form and iteration as a productivity tool for those people who have the requisite skills to be able to
Mhm.
verify the output.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's one of the most basic things in IT, right? Let's go way back to like Windows 3, one of Microsoft's first hit, GUI operating system. Windows 3 crashed a lot, as I recall, somewhat frequently, but it would not corrupt your data. And that's the thing. Like, you've got to use AI in such a way that it's not going to corrupt your data. It's not going to
Right.
delete your database, and it's not going to get you fired because it generated a fake analysis. And that's what everyone needs to keep in mind. And that's why they actually need to learn about these tools, even if they're using AI to generate the code so they know what in the world it's doing.
Yeah, and absolutely correct. And as you saw in the book, in the last chapter of the book, Copilot in Excel, which is no different than any other AI tool, by the way,
Right.
whether you're using Claude or Llama or whatever, it doesn't actually matter. Whatever LLM you're using, large language model, they're always very confident.
Right.
They don't give you like they don't do things like I think maybe you should use 4 clusters for your segmentation analysis. They don't say that. They're like,
No,
we
no.
use 4. And if you don't know enough to say how did you come up with 4,
Right.
Right.
that's the problem. Because like the example in the book, Matt, is like I asked Copilot, how'd you come up with 4? And it's like, well, I read I did this and this and this. I'm like, well, but
I did an elbow method analysis.
I did an elbow method analysis and I came up with 4. And then I look at it as a human, the human in the loop, and I'm like, well, obviously it's 3. And then Copilot's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. If you think it's 3, we'll use 3. Tell me.
Well,
But the
I
problem
think
is,
the moral of the story there is distrust but verify.
right, distrust but verify. That's even better yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, distrust but verify. But like for me, somebody like me or anybody else who builds the requisite skills, it's very very powerful. I published a LinkedIn newsletter last week where I showed how to use Copilot and Excel AI prompts to conduct a market basket analysis. And it's actually quicker than writing all the Python code yourself. However, if you don't know how to structure the prompts just right, and that takes the knowledge,
Yeah.
it's a crapshoot what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. I'm like, look, these are awesome tools for people who have the requisite skills, and if
Right.
for
Right.
professionals who invest themselves to develop them, and or companies that invest in their people to get these skills, they're going to get some pretty good productivity benefits, and like their finance and marketing and supply chain teams are going to be able to do really, really cool things if they build the requisite skills.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And do you have any closing thoughts as we close this up? And I'll just say before your closing thoughts that anyone listening to this who uses Excel and is interested in extending into the domain of Python and using AI generated Python code should totally check out your book. But yeah, I'll hand it to you for the to close things out.
Yeah, closing thoughts is that just basically look, any almost any business professional who wants to learn these tools, learns Python, wants to learn some of these advanced analytics techniques that the Copilot AI is going to use, you can do it. You totally can do it. You don't have to have a master's in statistics or anything like that to do it, right? You just focus on the techniques that are relatively simple but deliver disproportionate value, and you can learn all this stuff, and then you can be very productive with Copilot in Excel.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to meet with us. And thank you for writing the book because that is a huge, huge undertaking. And I think a lot of people are going to appreciate it when it comes out in February.